Welcome to a new generation. PlayStation 5 is here in a big way. No, seriously, this thing is big. Now, I primarily play games on PC, so this is going to be coming from a slight skew of a PC gamer perspective as I review the PlayStation 5. Well, the PS4 was a great console, and there was a solid generation where there were certainly some awesome, great games. There were definitely some technical mistakes. The most egregious being the use of a Jaguar CPU and dragging it kicking and screaming into 2020. Just was rough and definitely held back the last generation. Well, things have changed, but just how well does this generation stack up? We're going to find all that out and more with this PlayStation 5 review. But before we get going, please subscribe. We have tons of other PlayStation 5 content up today and in the near future. And we're also giving away a copy of Cyberpunk 2077 on your platform of choice. All you have to do is be subscribed. Check out our community tab for more info. So, there are two SKUs this time for the PlayStation 5. There's an all-digital SKU, and for $100 more, at $500, you can get the normal PlayStation 5, which has a Blu-ray 4K drive. Now, $100 for a disc drive feels pretty rough, honestly. You're essentially, the way I see it, artificially restricting the back compatibility and the ability to acquire cheap used games. And this is also kind of a stinger because this is the first time since the PS2 that you can't watch movies on a PlayStation. On the other hand, a 4K Blu-ray drive will run you about $100 if you just wanted to go buy one of those and pick them up. So I'd say if you have any interest in watching 4K movies at all, or picking up old PS4 games, go with the disc drive model of the PlayStation 5. Now, let's talk about this obelisk. I like the design today. It looks and feels premium. We'll see if we laugh about it in a few years. It really is, compared to the Xbox Series X, which is playing a much more conservative role, this is the most loud PlayStation, loud visually, that has ever released. Plates can be removed and replaced, those side panels, so we should actually see some customization down the road. My biggest issue with the design is it seems to rely on a stand, and I can just about guarantee that these will be lost or broken. And this isn't like the stand on the Nintendo Wii, where you could basically just ditch it. You really can't put it on its side without it, and considering how tall it is, I think a lot of people are going to want to tuck it in on its side somewhere. Well, hopefully these stands are durable and aren't lost. The PlayStation 5 ships with a new DualSense controller. As an Xbox controller fan, this feels like yet another step towards the Xbox controller scheme. I like it. The controller has a mic, gyro, touchpad, the equivalent of HD rumble, and speakers, just like the DualShock. The big new feature, however, for the DualSense is the adaptive triggers. And I'll admit they are impressive. It is kind of scary how good they are at simulating springs, simulating bows, simulating triggers. I honestly, the first time I put the triggers down, I thought I was going to break it when it asked me to push harder. That's how much force that they can add in these triggers. It's impressive, but we'll see. I mean, you see a lot of these tech demos and iterations like HD Rumble, but how much is it really used in the long run? We'll have to see. Certainly well-built, robust controller that is now on USB-C, with the front of the PlayStation 5 itself having a USB-C and USB-A port as well. So we're up to date with our USBs, which is really nice and refreshing to see. Specs. Speaking of, the CPU is an 8-core Zen 2 CPU at 3.5 gigahertz variable frequency. I mean, this is fairly close to a 3700X. That's a nice CPU. And yeah, it's not quite hitting the clock speeds of a 3700X, but 8 Zen 2 cores, it's basically a downclock 3700X. This is unbelievably huge of an improvement compared to the PlayStation 4 and the previous generation consoles. This is a massive step forward, and it's honestly the most exciting part on the spec sheet to me personally. There is an RDNA 2 GPU with 36 compute units at 2.23 gigahertz variable frequency. Now, these GPUs aren't even on the market yet. Well, they are now in these consoles, but the closest thing that we have to compare it to is the 6800, which has 60 CUs at 16 teraflops. And that is interesting because that is about a $500 GPU, so that's about the cost of the console itself. So this is a cut down RDNA 2 GPU for sure. That being said, it's already shown its weight and its worth with ray tracing in games like Miles Morales Spider-Man and in the B-roll that you're going to be seeing from Demon's Souls. All that being said, it is really good to see that ray tracing is on this generation of consoles, and it's really good to see that 4K seems to be the default resolution out the gate. And for storage, this is probably the worst part of the deal. You get an 825 gigabyte PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. Now, this is rough because once everything's said and done, you only have about 667 gigabytes of usable storage. And when games like Modern Warfare take upwards of 200 gigabytes, you're not going to be storing a lot of games on this thing. I mean, I only have like 3 or 4 games on there at the moment, and I am more than a quarter of the way, approaching a third of the way full of my storage. And this is, I guess, a little questionable to me of a decision. Both Sony and Microsoft have decided to go PCIe Gen 4 route. It's an extremely expensive SSD. I don't know why they didn't go PCIe Gen 3, but maybe we'll see as the generation progresses. Let's be real, this thing is a beast. This is up to par with modern systems. If you made a PC in the last 2 years, this thing is competing with that system. It has ray tracing, PCIe Gen 4, 8-core of Zen 2. This is honestly very close to my personal gaming PC. This is a huge upgrade, and it rivals most gaming computers, if not exceeds a lot of older gaming computers on the market now. My biggest issue with the specs is the SSD. There is one M.2 slot to expand the SSD, but that true SSD speed you won't get without using the main drive, because the main drive is custom made by Sony. It's soldered onto the board. It has a custom controller, and there's going to be limitations to what you can do with your expanded space on your M.2 drive, which is a shame. So you're stuck with a fairly limited amount of storage. But how does the experience work? How does it all come together, and how does it feel? Well, it all comes together really nicely, to be honest. The SSD does not eliminate load times like Sony has been saying. It does, however, make them very manageable. Instead of games taking minutes to load, games now take seconds to load. Usually under half a minute, definitely under half a minute once you're in the game. Most of the time when you're in the game, there's almost no loading time. But getting the game going does take a while, especially in back compat. I noticed launching Last of Us Part 2 did still take quite a while. This basically just feels like any old SSD in a gaming PC, though. If you have been used to using SSDs in your gaming PC, and you know how slow that the last generation of console hard drives were, yeah, you know exactly what to expect. Things load fast, but they definitely still load. Performance, acoustics, and thermals have all been great, and back compat has been a pleasant surprise. Games with dynamic resolution or unlocked frame rates should fully utilize the PlayStation 5's extra horsepower and bring the resolution to its cap, or bring the frame rate to its cap, presumably 60 FPS, which is awesome. Hopefully we get some patches for more of these older games to leverage the power of the PlayStation 5, unlock some of those previously locked settings. In conclusion, let's not mince words. You basically cannot buy a comparable gaming PC for $400 to $500 right now. PlayStation 5 is simply the king of value. Obviously, the upgradability of PCs will overtake the PlayStation 5 eventually, but if you want 4K gaming, ray tracing, and 60 FPS gameplay, with PlayStation exclusives and a huge back compat library, as icing on the top, then I'd say the PlayStation 5 is a no-brainer. That's all for me, guys. Catch you next time.